We are looking at these IT and network convergence and looking at a consolidated architecture so we can optimize our operations as well as consolidate systems.
Hello and welcome back. We are at the ATxEnterprise part of ATx Singapore, and with me today I have Ishari Siriwardane, who's the General Manager of Digital Transformation Projects at Sri Lanka Telecom. Welcome, Ishari. Great to have you.
Hi, nice to be here, Tara.
Yeah, I've always wanted to meet you face to face, and today at the ATxEnterprise, we have a chance to basically carry our conversations from online to offline today. Sure. And I know that Sri Lanka Telecom has a lot of initiatives going on, and I think you're one of the best persons who have been talking about this, leading the dialogue. So let's dive in and then learn from you some of the great work that you're doing at SLT. So, we know that telcos generally are evolving beyond connectivity. So they don't want to be just, providing those pipes. They want to go beyond that, and they want to be digital ecosystem enablers. And I think that's a big topic for you. Yes. So how is SLT positioning itself within the Sri Lanka market when it comes to, enabling digital economy transformation?
Yeah. Thanks, Tara. It's a great question. So before I answer you, I'll just give a brief context to the company that I work for. Mm-hmm. So it's Sri Lanka Telecom, and it's a group of companies. So we have our mobile operation through Mobitel. So we call it the SLT Mobitel Group. And we are a 169-year-old company.
169?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Wow.
So we have been there, and we have gone through a lot of transformations, starting from a public ministry-owned department to a totally public, private company listed in the Colombo Stock Exchange, so one of the blue chip companies. And it went through a lot of transitions, as I mentioned earlier. So actually, I had the Digital Transformation Projects Division, which was recently established to look at transforming our organization from, as you very correctly mentioned, a traditional telco who provides connectivity-only services to move beyond connectivity to become a Techco organization.
Yes, exactly.
And with AI, now we are looking at becoming AI native Techco, I would say. So that's what we aspire to become. So we have, started our transformation journey, which we call the DigiWay program. So internally, we are looking at a lot of transformation programs to look at, to bring in the operational efficiency, as well as to improve the customer experience, and also bring in AI-enabled services and look at AI for our internal operational efficiencies, as well as to build talent around the AI capabilities as well. So from an internal organizational point of view, that's what we are doing. But we are also the national telecommunication service provider in Sri Lanka. So because 52% of the shares are being owned by the government of Sri Lanka. So we have an obligation to provide services.
A bigger mandate, right?
Correct, yeah. So we are actually supporting the government also to build the digital economy, because government also aspires to build a $15 billion economy by 2030, a digital economy. So we are contributing to that as well in very many areas in terms of supporting them with infrastructure enablement, providing connectivity, and we also provide the Lanka government network, which is like connecting all of the government offices in Sri Lanka, as well as we are the national cloud provider. Like the Lanka government cloud is also hosted in our data centers. So we provide services, not just connectivity, but we are looking at beyond connectivity, also providing the government with different vertical specific solutions, such as in the tourism sector, the transport and mobility sector, judiciary sector. So likewise, we're looking at different solutions for the government, and also looking at enabling, platforms for other service companies like the enterprises and consumers as well. So that's what we're doing.
Yeah, I guess, when you say, when you talked about Techco, right? And we see that's where a lot of telcos are moving towards. And, earlier today in one of our sessions, we also talked about how from telco to techcos that people are moving to salesco, which means that, they own, because you own the subscribers. And then when you develop all these additional services like cloud capabilities, right? So you're going beyond just networks. You basically can bundle more services, both to your enterprises. Of course, you start with the government organizations, and by serving the government organizations, you build the capabilities, and now you can bring that to enterprises and then bring that to retail customers as well. And I think it's going to be like a huge journey, a transitioning and heading that transition, making it happen. Because I guess, like today when you said about, you talked about the cloud services. Cloud, I mean, everyone talks about cloud, but delivering that service is not as easy, isn't it?
Yeah.
And, cybersecurity challenges, and now we have sovereignty issues. A lot of enterprises will approach you guys because they need to keep data on clouds that are located within Sri Lanka, and that becomes like a key requirement. And and these are the things that you have to tailor.
Yeah.
And you would have seen different enterprises, different unique needs, different SLAs.
Yeah, you're right. So on the governance side, back in 2022, Sri Lanka also introduced the Personal Data Protection Act in Sri Lanka, which was gazetted in 2022, but it came into full force operation recently, like 1 year back. So we do have additional compliances that we have to adhere to in terms of protecting the personal data of customers, because we are one of the first party data providers who hold the personally identifiable information, or we call it the PII information.
PII,
So
yes.
we have additional securities and controls and compliances that we need to adhere to. And also, I think, so that we have seriously taken into consideration. So we have looked at establishing our data and AI governance policy in SLT Mobitel. So it was one of the transformation projects that we initiated to establish the data and AI governance policy for the company, adhering to the Personal Data Protection Act, as well as looking at internal controls, the data quality, because we are looking at, as we started the conversation, going beyond connectivity and looking at monetizing data as well, because we, as telcos, we sit in a whole pile of data, and we don't really monetize it appropriately. I would say we do have a lot of opportunities, but in order to explore and exploit these opportunities, obviously we need to have that capability of running it and operating with the good governance within the organization.
Exactly.
So we do that, and so we have recently established that project, and we have established the data and AI governance. We are also looking at bringing in best practices such as this ISO 42001, which is the latest standards that we need to adopt to, and we are implementing AI specifically. So we are looking at bringing in those practices as well into the organization when we develop these AI use cases. And as you very correctly mentioned, in the enterprise domain specifically, customers demand different SLAs, different requirements in terms of governance, as well as the operational capabilities. We are like the market leader in terms of providing enterprise services to our enterprise segment in Sri Lanka.
Wow.
So we provide a lot of services, starting from cloud to data-related services to enterprise solutions, where we collaborate with SI partners and other vendors to provide package solutions, bundling with connectivity and infrastructure services. So I think we have been doing so well in the enterprise segment, where we have been able to satisfy the customers as well as to maintain the service levels that they require to be maintained.
I guess when you talked about how you are bringing the AI guardrails as part of the service offerings, because AI is naturally the next progression. You provide cybersecurity, you provide cloud, you tie in all the digital services, and now you have AI as well, and people want to host AI workloads on the same cloud, and then you bring into the mix the PII, the personally identifiable information, and AI is ingesting all this information. So you need to make sure that, when you introduce yet another layer of complexity in here, that you take care of the potential risks and all that. And there's someone who's going into the digital services space in a big way. Of course, there's something that you have to impute, in the way you tailor your solutions and you meet the needs of the customers. So a very interesting space. And for telcos to be doing this, have you ever, imagined that, one day you guys will be sitting at the forefront of IT as well? Because, we all come from a telco background, and then now we are looking at all the entire suite of IT services, because it has all come together, converge. So how is the experience, when you see this?
Yeah, so transitioning from traditional connectivity and a telco background to a softwareized, cloud-enabled, IT-enabled organization. So that has become a challenge. And in fact, I mean, how we have, even in our transformation program, we actually focus on like looking at consolidating even the architectures, right? So we have been having IT architecture separately and a network architecture separately. So we are looking at a unified network and IT architecture, where we are looking at, and since we also have the fixed domain and the mobile domain, which is run by two different companies. So we are looking at convergence there as well, looking at a unified company and a unified license, because right now we operate in two different license thing, because that actually help us from an architecture point of view to optimize our operations, bringing consolidations to the system so we can optimize the costs, which is one of the biggest challenges that we have in the telco environment, because the traditional voice data services are become commoditizing.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
So because of that, of course, we need to manage the costs so that we offer a reasonable price to our consumers as well as to the enterprises, so that they can afford the communication services. So whatever comes above the connectivity, those are the services. Like, so we are also focusing on not just connectivity, going beyond that, looking at enterprise solutions, consumer solutions, like in the retail sector also, SaaS-based solutions, PaaS kind of solutions, because we do have our data centers and the cloud environments that we have enabled within our data centers. So that type of a consolidation is required, right? So we are looking at these IT and network convergence and looking at a consolidated architecture so we can optimize our operations as well as consolidate systems, looking at unification in terms of fixed and mobile domains, where we can look at, again, optimizing our investments and looking at convergence in terms of systems. And also on the data pillar, we also can look at converging data, right? Because we have consumer data of a particular customer, whatever the profiles and the personas that we build on their fixed domain, if we can kind of like, using a data clean room or something like that, converge with the mobile persona, we can have a better and a broader knowledge of the single customer, and then we can go on to offerings such as hyper personalization and all that, so that we can offer more relevant as well as a better experience to the customers. So in terms of whatever our service offerings are, so that's kind of like, it's challenging, and you also have to look at the enhancing and enabling the capabilities of our teams. Right? So talent has become one of the biggest challenges. So it's not just for us, but even for any other telco. How do we build the capabilities, talents, reskilling people in the AI domain? That is again another thing that we are really focusing on, and looking at the culture transformation as well, because since I told, like, we are a 169-year-old company, so the culture that we had with the legacy services and the legacy mindset,
it's totally different right now, right? And you are catching up with all the major players, and one of the players that we are dealing with are the hyperscalers, and at the speed at which they are moving, and you having the same mandate as them to you have to match up with their capabilities to serve enterprises, right? So different skill set, different culture. And this is pushing us, from becoming a pure conventional or traditional telco to the likes of, larger organized hyperscalers like Google. We have to match up to that speed and also the agility and the broad offerings that you have to start building to make sure that you satisfy the enterprise needs or consumer needs. And I guess, that brings us to one of the last things that we want to talk about, which is establishing the bigger ecosystem. And, SLT, right at the middle of this equation. I'm sure you guys work with hyperscalers that we have just mentioned. And then you want to bring in other services like cybersecurity services. Obviously, you have to work with vendors in this area, and you work with regulators directly. Of course, on the other hand, you have your enterprises that you collaborate and build solutions together. And then we have the retail customers. So, how do you grow the ecosystem and partnerships, and what's your strategy?
Yeah, so like you very correctly mentioned, Tara, we do collaborate with many partners, and we have a big partner ecosystem built, because gone are the days where any company cannot operate alone as a single entity. We need to collaborate for various purposes. So we do collaborate with hyperscalers, as you very correctly mentioned, for various enterprise and retail based solutions. And we also collaborate with, we have a big system integrator partner network in our country. So for some other solutions, we bring in the expertise and the strengths of the SI partners as well. And also one of the kind of like economically a big contributor is the startup ecosystem, right?
Okay.
Because we do have a lot of startup companies who have this technical expertise as well as the agility. Because as you very correctly mentioned, we are legacy telcos who does not have that agile capabilities. Even for us to bring a particular product to the market, it takes a lot of time, like maybe about 6 to 9 months. Whereas these startups, of course, they come up with the solutions at a faster pace. And they do have the expertise built, especially on different solution domains where we don't have, because we are like a connectivity-led company. So in order to build, especially for the digital portfolio that we are trying to bring into the market, we do rely on this partner ecosystem as well as these startup companies. So we have different business models to collaborate with them. So what we do is we usually, because these are new to the market, and we also want to experiment and see what would be the market take up. So we don't want to burn our fingers by investing a lot of capex and building everything internally or buying things. So we are looking at predominantly these rev share partnerships where we sell together, go as a SLT branded SLT Mobitel branded product, go to the market together, and whatever the revenue that we build a customer, because we maintain the billing relationships, we have the access to the customer base. So we actually build the customer, and whatever the settlement that we do settled at the back end to these startup partners. So they actually help us bring things to the market at a faster pace with these alternative business models that I spoke about. And also we do collaborate with even with the government as well as the enterprise customers. And sometimes now we also look at building platforms specifically for government requires, like the transport vertical, tourism, judiciary I spoke about. So in certain instances, we also co-create solutions, like for example, for payments, we depend on the banking ecosystem. So we do have different partnerships with the financial and fintech companies to bring in certain add-ons to whatever the service offerings that we bring in. So I mean, strategies are looking at alternative business models for different partnerships and looking at not just investing on capex all the time, but looking at different alternative models. And we also have a broader collaboration with the university ecosystem in Sri Lanka because we depend on the universities for talent and we look at different models of acquiring talent as well. Because, I've been in SLT Mobitel for 20 plus years, right? But the newcomers who come to join the company, especially in the tech field, especially for the IT related skills that we want, we don't see the Gen Zs, obviously, they don't stay in one company for a longer period of time, right? So in order to retain the talent and ensure that we have a talent pipeline built, so we have, collaborated with universities for one thing, like our HR came up with a very innovative solution to acquiring staff, where we even do a part financial assistance to some of these students who take tech-based courses. So they sign up with us, we fund a part of their degree program. So at the end of the completion of the degree, they are supposed to serve us for 2-3 years. So by that, we are stretching the time that they're going to stay with us. And also constant and looking at different ways of like freelance models kind of things and even internships so that we also have a continuous talent pipeline we've built within the organization for key technical talent, as well as also supporting these, students who would want to aspire to work in the tech field. And also we collaborate with universities for some of these AI projects, because they do have these research and development facilities and labs in the university. So we don't have those core capabilities. So we kind of like collaborate with the universities for co-creating solutions. So these, I would say, are the different ways we collaborate with the partner system.
Awesome, awesome. I think, you highlighted, how important it is to have different models.
Exactly.
You talked about, how you use the R&D capabilities of universities, and then you nurture your own pipeline of talent, starting from university itself. And then how you work with the smaller companies, the more agile ones, because you need a particular solution and you can't develop that in-house. It takes a long time And you know, in legacy environments, it takes even longer. So, you know, having these different models, these creative models, enables you to bring together all the resources that you need right now to build and deliver services as they are demanded, right? So I guess that's really great. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Tara. It's a pleasure talking.
Yeah, it's awesome. And you know, I think we learned a great deal about SLT, and we look forward to seeing it grow by leaps and bounds. And let's catch up again in another session.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.